targets for South African football. And said, you know, we know we have the talent here in the country. We've just not been able to demonstrate that in a group setting. We've just not been able to organize that properly. Let us set ourselves a target of becoming, again, one of the top 3 countries on the African continent. And also, let us, by 2022, look back and say that we have been consistently amongst the top 20 in the world. Now, we were there before. We took our foot off the pedal a little bit and slid back a little bit, but we are on the way back there again. And you know as well as I do that we said we needed to actually make sure that we restructure South African football the way we know it today, or we knew it back then, I should say. Relaunch all of our age group leagues, under 13, under 15, under 17 leagues. Make sure that our interprovincial competition system gets back up and running again, and just keep our national teams busy. But let that, the playing talent that is now coming through the ranks make the national team. On a consistent basis and spread from all across the country. And essentially, you know, that is what we've been working on consistently for the last 4 years in implementing this Vision 2022. And essentially, what is this Vision 2022 program? Is a program that consists of 8 pillars. Those 8 pillars, I'm going to skip through. Colleagues, did you get a copy of this presentation? Okay, you'll have a copy of the presentation. I'm not going to take a lot of time around the governance issues, but you will see that in order for South African football to progress, we needed to put in place better management systems for this organization. We needed to reform the governance structures of this organization to make sure that there's accountability built into the system. And what you see in that presentation is a bit of a sketch. It's a very, very high-level sketch. Colleagues, there's a lot of information and documentation that underpins what you see in that presentation there. But, you know, as we go along, you could probably enrich yourself. We'll put all of the stuff. We have put some stuff up on our website. We will continue to put information on the website as and when, you know, people ask for it, or as and when we have the information we will use, and we have been using the website as a resource kit or a toolkit for people who want to know what is happening in South African football. But the governance changes that we've undertaken is essentially highlighted in this presentation here, following on the principles of governance that FIFA has adopted. It now must be cascaded down into the national associations all around the world. So principles of leadership, governance, and participation is something that we are working on a consistent basis, from the NEC to the provincial executive committees, to make sure that the organization is run a little better than it used to be. And these are just some of the details on the principles of leadership, the principles of governance, and the principles of participation, meaning that the more we have people participating in the governance of the game and in the rollout of our programs, the more successful we are going to become. And so you'll see me, I'm going to skip over a lot of these slides here, because what I want to come to you about is essentially what I think you, or what we agree you are here for today. This is what I spoke about earlier, is that the targets here for us is essentially to become and be consistently seen amongst the top 3 countries on the African continent and among the top 20 in the world. And another thing that we also, when we looked at what the successful countries were doing right, that we were not doing at the time. And we looked at, for instance, Germany. And in Germany, about the same time that Germany put in their 10-year plan back in 2004, we also had a 10-year plan. Bubi, you'll remember, you were still at SAFA at the time, or around that time. We had our own strategic plan that we put in place. I know I went to Germany, spent some time in Germany, and we looked through, worked on our plans together, and literally what we produced together, the Germans took and implemented it. We finished ours, we didn't implement it. Unfortunately, the World Cup intervened. I know I went to F&B Stadium, and then after that I went to the World Cup. The president, who was then the CEO at the time, also, you know that we ran the most successful World Cup ever, including the Brazil 2014 World Cup. And so that took a lot of energy from a lot of people who couldn't implement that plan. What happened is that Germany said in 2004, we want to win the World Cup in 2014. What did they do? They went and they won the World Cup in 2014 because they went and implemented the plan. And essentially, what we said is that we really need to do that. And Germany, as a case study, we found out that Germany organizes at least 10% of their population, or at least 10% of the German population plays the game. And that gives them a very broad pool of talent to select from. And they put in structures in place. You know, the regional academies that promote and develop talent throughout Germany has given them a base from which to work from. And so we said one of the key targets for us is also to make sure that we organize 10% of the population. As you know, there are about 3 million, approximately 2-3 weeks ago, we got some research that says about 3.2 million South Africans play football right now. But we said in order for us to get 10% of the population, we estimate the South African population going to be, by 2022, about 55 million people. So we should have at least 5 million people who play the game. 5 million people who play the game in South Africa. We are sitting at 3 million. We should be adding another 2 million in the next 5 years. So that's a huge task for us. It's a huge task for you, because we're going to put this burden on your shoulders, literally. Because you will need to go out and make sure that in your provinces, we ask, that you make sure that the competition structures that are run in those provinces, that are mounted in those provinces, is actually competition structure that aims at this particular objective. That people participate, that people achieve, and that our national teams and our interprovincial tournaments and the representative teams have the proper talent in them. So one of the key targets here for achieving the success that we are aiming for is to make sure that 10% of the population actually plays the game. The second area where we said we needed to, or not the second area, but the one way or two ways in which we are going to reach that target is to make sure that whatever we do, we also prioritize women's football, because that's the next area of growth for South African football. And this is why we insisted, if we are going to put up a structure of technical officers and any other structure, that we must get one woman and we must get one man at least. In equal numbers, we have to grow the women's football component of our game. And so, two of the ways in which we are going to reach that target is by expanding the women's game. You heard a couple of weeks ago we announced that we are going to finally start that Women's National League. I'm working on the details now, trying to get the budget together, but we will kick off with at least 12 teams as a start. And then we take it from there so that there is a functioning women's football, national women's football league, which would hopefully plug the gap between the existing SASO league and the national teams, Banana and the other junior national teams. The second area of expansion for us, we've said, is to make sure that we organize football in our school system. There are 27,000 schools in this country. And what we know to date, we have not been able to get the correct numbers, is that football is only being played somewhere between 3 and 6,000 schools. So we have a huge task on our hands. We said we will work and strike a partnership with the Department of Basic Education. 24,000 of those schools sit directly under the authority of the Department of Basic Education is the public schools. We need to enter the public school system and get football to be played in those 24,000 schools that are under the direct authority of the Department of Basic Education. And in order to increase our numbers and thereby improve or increase the talent that is available to us for selection. So Vision 2022 in a nutshell is what you see on this one screen here. We want to be amongst the top 3 on the African continent. We want to be amongst the top 20 in the world. We are going to make sure that we broaden the pool of players by organizing football in at least 10% of the population. And how we are going to do that is by expanding women's football and by reaching out to the school system. That's really how we see ourselves reaching this target. Now, when we talk about Vision 2022, what is it that we are talking about? A lot of people say, okay, fine, Vision 2022 is only this technical performance part of it. You know, it's all about football. Yes, it is all about football. It's number one. It is what we are striving for. Everything else, colleagues, is secondary and in support of that major objective of us becoming amongst the top football countries in the world. Now, but in order to do that, you also need to get the resources. As I said before, we really didn't have the resources at the time when we approved or when we adopted the technical master plan. Also very few details that were outlined in that technical master plan. But we had to go and start and make sure that the organization itself is a financially stable organization. We went out and to give confidence to the market that whatever money we get in SAFA, that money will be well managed. We then, in order to do that, some people are quite surprised when we say this to them, we closed our finance department. We shut our finance department completely and handed out the management of our finances over to Ernst & Young, one of the more reputable accounting firms in the world. And they have, since 2012, been managing our finances. So whatever money comes in, goes through EY, whatever claims are made, and all of their reports and accounts are being managed by EY in a very transparent manner. And we are happy to report that in the entire existence also of SAFA, going backwards, but even now improving under the management of EY, SAFA has never had a qualified annual financial statement. So it's one of the big achievements, I think, in the last 5 years, or the last 4 years, 5 years, in us handing over our financial management to EY. It's an independent party. Nobody can get away with any funny business. Whatever the money is intended for, EY makes sure that money is spent for that purpose. So, but also we need to have an organization that is commercially viable. It's pity I don't have the time today, but at some point perhaps you can go on the website and you can go and look and see what we are doing in the digital space. We've established the SAFA Digital Department. We are establishing a digital platform. You will see we are more and more present on the social networks. Our website is transforming even more. It has been transformed, but we will even do more. We'll launch probably in the next week or two a revamped website with a whole lot more information that will help you to do what you need to do on the ground level in all of the different provinces. But we need to develop an organization that can sell itself to the corporate world, to government, and to other partners to come on board and to work with us, because we cannot do this on our own. We need corporate South Africa. We need the public to be able to buy into this, and therefore putting a good commercial package together is one of our key priorities. I've already pointed out that in terms of governance, any organization will stand or fall by the way it's managed. And it has to be managed in a way that says that all of us as administrators are subservient to this key and central objective of improving our technical performance. We cannot be, whether it's the president or whether it's a member of the National Executive Committee or the CEO or the general manager for football or the technical director, cannot be above this purpose. We all are here to serve football, to grow football, not to become businessmen, not to become financiers or what. We need the money, we need the commercial the commercial part of the organization to sell the organization, but for the purpose of improving our game. That is the core purpose, and we must never forget that. Because I remind the staff in the office every single time I meet them, they are there because they are supposed to service this objective here. Then, on the other hand, in order to do that, a stable and world-class administration, we are busy putting together what I think are the building blocks of a world-class administration. We are already involved in football structures. I think FIFA and CAF and COSAFA is looking to us to provide leadership in our area on the African continent, and some of our people are being used all around the world to go and assist FIFA and CAF in implementing their programs as well. But it's a key objective of ours because we are also going to continue to learn what the rest of the world is doing. We can't isolate ourselves as South Africans here and say, no, you know, we're going to play amongst ourselves, and by that we know we are going to be among the best in the world. And you can't do that in isolation. In order to become part of the best of the world, you must play against the best of the world. You must compete and measure yourself against the best of the world. And so many of us are actually going around and assisting and learning as much as we can and bringing those learnings back. Needless to say, and another one of the key pillars of Vision 2022 is this organization. The more respect it carries in the public domain, the more support we will get in the public domain, and the more stable this organization becomes. So you will see we have a huge emphasis on maintaining a positive image for South African football. Now we can do that in a very proactive way by engaging people, by talking to people about how to conduct themselves within our structures, how to engage other role players outside of football, in the sports community, in government and so forth, how to do that in order to project this positive image of South African football. Sorry, I'm pressing the wrong buttons here. But it is very important for us to do so. You know, one way, as I said, we can do it in a very kind, in a very gentle way. On the other hand, we're also very jealous of maintaining this image and have taken action against anyone who has actually gone and brought this association into disrepute, even at the highest level. So just because you are the president or the vice president elected doesn't mean that we cannot also demand from you that you project a positive image of this organization. So nobody is immune to this. Then, as I said before, whatever it is that we do, this is a key priority for us. Gender equality, whatever we do, whatever we perform, whenever we engage, top of our minds must be the inclusion of women all along the way in the rollout of this plan. So those are the 8 pillars. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Perhaps there are some questions from you on each one of these 8 pillars, but this is what we talk about when we talk about Vision 2022. Vision 2022 is not just a little program or something that we are doing in isolation of all of the others. All of these 8 pillars must function together. We must all come to the party and work together on an equal basis here in rolling out and making sure that we do what we need to do to strengthen South African football by strengthening each and every one of these 8 pillars. So it's a holistic program that seeks the overall improvement and repositioning of South African football. It is a fundamental restructuring of South African football for the purposes of becoming amongst the best in the world, and we have to behave in that way. Now, when Neil came on board 2 years ago, hey, you're getting old.
Quickly.
It's already 2 years. You know, one of the key things that we said is that what we must do in order to achieve this objective here of improving our technical performance is that Neil must come in as the technical director. I know, you know, even the CAF people come and the FIFA people come and complain to us, hey, you're giving Neil too much work to do. Said, you know, in order for us to achieve what we need to achieve on the field of play, we have to integrate and make sure that we understand the interdependencies of the different elements of the game. You cannot remove the referees from the overall conduct of the game itself, because that referee impacts the flow of the game on the field. You cannot separate the ball boys or the ball kids from the game, have untrained ball kids, because they also impact the flow of the game and the growth of the game over a period of time. So all of that is integrated, our referees program, our coaching development program, our youth development program, our competitions program, all of that, they must speak to one another, they must relate to one another, and the way to achieve that is to make sure that the technical director understands all of those components and is able to direct all of those components to come together and to sit and relate to one another. And that's essentially what we have done here, is to put some highlights out of that workshop of the NEC, put some headline items to make sure that the technical director has something that he can measure himself against to see whether we are actually moving in South African football. And I'm sure this workshop will unpack all of these things. So I'm not going to do that now, other than just try and give you a broad overview of what we talk about when we talk about Vision 2022. So when somebody comes up to you and asks you, listen, you know, this Vision 2022, tell me, show me, what is it that we are talking about. But essentially, what we are saying here is that for us to move as an organization, for us to move as SAFA, we need to be seen to be in control of football, we need to be seen to be developing the game, we need to be seen to be projecting a positive image all the time, we need to be able to go and get people to partner with us, and we need to promote the game and grow the game and develop the game, and also reach out to those who have been excluded from the game previously. And that, in a nutshell, is really what we talk about when we talk about Vision 2022. And this is really essentially where you fit in. Neil, I'm sure you are going to talk a little bit more about this, so I'm not going to go into detail here either. But this is how we view your role in this overall plan. This is what we call the technical director's brains trust. This is a collective of technical officers around the country. We want to cascade this system all the way down to the local level. Make sure that in each province there are technical officers who can actually go and look at this. I want to remove from that, so please disregard this referees development part there, because we are now moving in a direction where we're also going to capacitate the referee structure. I have asked Ian McLeod to come in, and Ian will go around the country to really put almost a similar system in place for referees as well. But what we want to do is, in terms of your role, the key objectives of the role of the technical officer, whether it's a provincial technical officer, a regional technical officer, and the local football association technical officer, is to ensure that there is adequate coaching development that takes place in your area. We are not going to be able to develop players at the world-class level unless we have world-class coaches. Players don't develop on their own. They can only develop with good coaching. And so then to make sure that the competition structures that you play, because as you coach player, you will find out, or you have already found out, you can tell me better than I can talk to you about that. But if that player is not playing the right level of competition, if that player is not involved in a strength versus strength environment, that player is not going to progress, that player is not going to grow. And so it also becomes part of your responsibility to take a look and see whether these competition structures in the province, in the regions, and on the LFA level are actually appropriate